Y2K was 20 years ago. What are your best Y2K stories? I worked in IT at one of the Dow Industrial Company's headquarters, and I spent a high percentage of 1999 doing Y2K tests on every single computer, server, printer, fax machine and, I'm pretty sure, coffee maker. No problems, and no signs of problems. That year was a waste of my life. In October, my dad finished off the spam he purchased for Y2K. He bought 12 cases of it because it was super cheap leading up to Y2K and he just really enjoys spam. I am honestly impressed at the dedication of someone to eat 288 cans of spam over 20 years. Lived in a house in the middle of the boonies with my friends shortly after high school. This house was owned by a survivalist software engineer who said we could live the rent free on the condition that we all go through survivalist training by a high-ranking Marine officer at his own expense. This was him initiating a small group of go-getters who would help him recreate society after the apocalypse, which was inevitably coming, most likely with the Y2K societal collapse. I learned how to navigate and triangulate with and without map and compass, lead a group of civilian soldiers, and shoot a Colt 45. By the end of training, I could assemble and disassemble it in a minute and 7 seconds blindfolded. The peak of our training was when my best friend and I, both female, took down a line of cans at 30 yards from the outside in, one starting on the left and the other starting on the right, in complete tandem, hitting the middle one simultaneously. The man who trained us was gushing with pride that day. New Year's came around. We sat by the fire, took some acid and contemplated what was next for our lives. My dad was 100% convinced Y2K was the end of the world. He bought ammo, MREs and stocked up on gold and silver. But the purchase that was the most amusing was he bought 200 pounds of rice. So over the next 7 years the joke around the house was, hey, do we have any rice? There was a mild celebration from my mother when she finally cooked the last of it. I had a friend whose sister was convinced that the world was going to straight up just stop at Y2K, like stop turning around and we'd all die really quickly. She surrounded herself with houseplants and was hyperventilating into a bag when the ball dropped, cause she was convinced that we'd rapidly run out of oxygen. Granted that she was 12, but nobody could convince her we'd be fine. She was so embarrassed when there wasn't a bunch of riots and world-ending stuff that she refused to talk to anyone, not even in school, which got her in a shitload of trouble, for over a month. I was afraid that all the power would go off at midnight, so I lit a bunch of candles and put them on my kitchen table. Went down to the basement and played StarCraft, Brood War for a few hours. Smoke alarm went off later and I rushed upstairs to find one of the candles had burned a ring-shaped mark into the table, from a candle base made of metal. My dad later gave me the table years later. It's still in my house to this day. I went to a street party with my then boyfriend. He wandered off and I ended up trapped in a conversation with an elderly man who asked me if I'd ever let a dog lick my labia. He gave me a few reasons why I should try it and I had no idea how to get away or say no in another way without being violent. That's most of what I remember from Y2K, so thank you, old man. My mom was pregnant with my brother at the time and really wanted to have him before Y2K just in case all electronics stopped working, so she forced him out 2 days before LOL. He is technically a 90s baby by barely 2 days. I was playing Pokemon Blue on an emulator on my 386 computer. Nothing happened. I looked at my system time and it reset to 1980. Every file on the computer worked, but if I tried to access a new file, say from a disk, of a newer date, the computer just said this file doesn't exist. So basically my old-ass computer had a bit of a temporal mindfuck. I desperately wanted my family to go watch fireworks or something, but everyone was horrendously frustratingly boring and wanted to go to bed. I was barely double digits, so I wasn't about to go out by myself. Anyway, I ended up watching TV and there was a woman on the popping ping pong balls out of her vajay in timing with the 1098. I wasn't born yet, but my dad apparently freaked the fuck out about it and it really shows even today. He refuses to turn on our Wi-Fi because he doesn't trust computers in the slightest, so we're stuck with Ethernet cables, which are fine for the most part, but my house doesn't get good data connection, so I'm never at more than 3 bars on my phone. Cousin's friend thought the world was gonna end. He then proceeded to spend his life savings on spaghetti. He filled the entire guest room with spaghetti. After he was out of money, he realized he forgot to buy sauce. Most of the spaghetti is still there. Husband's nutty aunt sent everybody Y2K survival kits, Revelation Generation brand. Included hand-cranked radio, cheesy first aid kit, matches, cheap pots, pans, rope, packets of water, case for valuables, like a plastic pencil case, backpack, foil blankets. Was being sold by some religious organization, because if Jesus endorses it, you know it's gotta be good. At least she didn't send him the barrel of Jim Back, a food product also endorsed by Jesus trademark. We actually used the radio after our power went out for over a week after Hurricane Sandy, so there's that. Still a pain to use, didn't help that much. Oh, here is a sad one. I was born